Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to your post-match Raw on AI Pro, podcasting to you from a field here in beautiful rural Ireland. I'm Trev Downey, and joining me to give their immediate reactions to Liverpool 1, West Ham 0 in the Premier League from Anfield are Dave Hendrick and Karl Matchett. Dave, that's a gnarly one in many ways. They had a couple of opportunities to put us to the sword, or at least claim an equaliser rather. But I think in the bigger scheme of things, on the balance of play, it might be just the wishful thinking of the Sky commentary team. I think it was a game that was dominated by the Reds pretty much over the course of the 90.
Yeah, I mean, we had 69% of the ball, 22 shots to their 13. But you would say that in terms of big opportunities, they might have had the better opportunities. You had the Bowen one where Robbo makes the great challenge, the Lanzini one where he skies it over the bar. Antonio had a couple of half chances, and I know I'm missing one as well. But they did create a number of problems for us, and they do that because, look, when you play a David Moyes team, you know a couple of things about them. They're going to be really well organised. They're going to be fundamentally sound. They're not going to make major mistakes. They won't beat themselves. They'll work really, really hard. And they won't let their heads drop. So even when you get that goal ahead, they don't start to panic. Like, we got a goal ahead. They started playing some possession football, just trying to calm themselves down and calm us down and take the sting out of the game before they started to rebuild. And that's twice we've played them now in the league this season. And twice they've done very, very well against us. They obviously beat us at the London Stadium. And I thought on that day, Moyes had a fantastic game in terms of his tactical setup. Today, I thought if our front three had just had a little bit more composure, in particular Salah, I think we could have scored a couple more. But there was an awful lot of snatching at shots and wasteful moments in the final third that really let us down. And I think you could see it in Klopp as well. I think he looked frustrated on the sideline that there wasn't just that little bit more composure, a little bit more of a cool head to our attacking play. But look, we get the win and we have to be happy. They're a good team. Anytime you beat a good team, it's a good result.
You know, the further that lad gets away from Taft's Tavern, and having been indoctrinated by my other podcast pal, Jan Malby, into understanding that actually David Moyes might know a good lot about the game, you have to admire what he's doing there. You really do. It's as you say, there's a lot of really good traits of that team that you can see.
Consider where they were when he came back the second time.
Yeah.
They were a team battling relegation. He kept them up. And I would say over last season and this season so far, he's probably been a top 3 manager in the league behind Guardiola and Klopp. Like, what he has done is outperformed expectation massively. And he's got a lot of good players there, but when you look beyond his first 11, there's no real depth. I know he could bring Benrahma on today, but you look at the rest of the bench there. Issa Diop is decent, but he's a centre-back. Areola's decent, but he's a goalkeeper. I mean, Mark Noble is washed. Fredericks isn't up to much. Masuaka is not up to much. He doesn't seem to realise Alex Kral exists. And then the other two are kids. He's not working with a strong squad like we have. He is working with, you know, at times a bit of a bare bones unit. And even in that team today, there's one or two you wouldn't want. And he is getting absolutely every single drop out of them. And in all likelihood, they'll finish in the European places again this year. And that's a massive achievement for them. Massive achievement for West Ham to get back-to-back European football. When was, like, they haven't done that maybe ever. They certainly haven't done it in the Premier League era.
Yeah, Carl, there's like you say, there is a lot going on there that you'd have to doff your cap to, and over the course of the game, we'll find ourselves doing that by dint of talking about the various events that take place over the 90 minutes, 95 minutes, as it turned out. But there's a lot. There's a lot to be said for sometimes old cliches, because they're often that, and they're awful well-known phrases for a reason. And one of the cliched ideas that I find myself leaning into very much is that, if you are going to challenge for a league, or hopefully make it one of 4 trophies that you raise at the end of the year, if you're going to win that thing, you are going to have these kind of afternoons where, yeah, you got to ride it out a little bit. You maybe have to ride that luck a little bit too, and just, get the win over the line by whatever means. And it really started to feel a lot like that. I was tensing away at the end of that game that I haven't been for quite a while, because it wasn't a lack of trust. It was just incredibly tense, Carl, because there's a lot riding on this. We all have this bananas expectation that perhaps we can maybe win this thing,
Yeah, and too right. You cannot go through the run that we've been on recently. And let's remember, this is, what is it now, 11 or 12? I've lost count, to be perfectly honest, of games that we've won in a row, if you count a penalty shootout victory as a win. You can't just win all of them playing at 100%. You can't win all of them by 3 or 4 clear goals every single time. You are going to have to suffer, is the word that they tend to use, isn't it? You're going to have to go through it a little bit, and we all know that we've won titles and trophies and cups, and even the league title with Liverpool, and it's never straightforward, and you can't just do it without having any kind of near misses. And today was not even that, let's be honest. It was just a little bit nervy towards the end. You even look at Man City, who we've got ourselves a little bit close to in the last couple of victories that they've had. Against Chelsea, it was kind of the same. After they'd got themselves ahead and they had to see out the end of the game, they were obviously under a bit of pressure. And against Everton even, it was only 1-0 there again. And you had to go through that last period of the game where, because you've slacked off or the tempo has dropped and you've not really put the game to bed with the chances that you've had, they do sense that opportunity to sneak a late point or anything like that. That's part of football. That's what makes this low-scoring sport more intriguing and more potentially upsetting than it has to be on the balance of most of the game. If you do leave a little bit of an opportunity, there's always the case that you can drop points, or on the other end of it, win a point that you don't necessarily deserve. We've done it ourselves in plenty of games before, but what we really have in this team is one, a resilience mentally where we can just stand up to these kind of tasks, whereas we all know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, we'd probably lost this game 2-1, to be perfectly honest. If we dropped off in the second half the way that we had done today, if we gave up the number of chances that we did, the counter-attacks that they hit us on, the players that we had in place instead of the current group of players, we would have conceded at least a couple of goals. And the other thing, obviously, is that I think it's definitely worth pointing out, between the game at the London Stadium earlier this season, where they absolutely bullied us, and today, I think there was a few lessons taken on board, and especially the back four were told, you be aggressive and you be physical or you will be coming off.
Yeah, I like that a lot, that point that you've led into. And one of the men who was aggressive and physical was Ibrahima Konate. And this kind of ties in with the point that you've just been making about, how you're going to have this on a long run, because Konate has yet to lose for Liverpool in 18 appearances in all competitions. I think he's got 5 draws and 13 wins. That now, not to steal your stat thunder, Carl, is the longest unbeaten start to a player's LFC career since Ray Houghton, who actually managed 23, which is quite an incredible start for him in 87, 88, when we had potentially what might still be the best ever Liverpool team. Another man who's got a similar stat, of course, is Virgil van Dijk, and he missed the shit show, which became the shit show because of his absence, if we're being circular about it, where we did lose those games at Anfield, because he just doesn't do that. And these kind of bananas statistics, obviously the Van Dijk one's far more impressive given the amount of games involved. These kind of banana statistics only happen to teams who are challenging for big things. And that's probably in and of itself a nice little yardstick to measure our attainment by in recent years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I bring it up every time I'm on Raw recently, but we had that terrible run where Van Dijk and all the rest of them were out. At Anfield in particular, a historically bad run for us at Anfield. But again, since we got over that little blip, we haven't lost a game there. And that just shows, again, not just the resilience and not just the quality, but also the ridiculous consistency that this team has. And it still isn't really appreciated or acknowledged as much as it should be in certain circles, and it's very, very difficult when you see it up close and you see it week in, week out, and you're thinking, we've got to win this game. When you actually look back at the games we've had over the last 4 or 5 years at Anfield, and you see just how many wins there are in those matches, it honestly it's lunatic. We'll look back on it in 10 years' time and we will realise we didn't quite understand just how good we had it with this side, certainly in terms of Anfield form at least. And today, another one. It can't always be, like I said, a 4-goal win, a 3-goal win. Sometimes you just got to get over the line, however it happens. We should have had a couple more goals today, but like Dave pointed out, they had their chances. They could argue that they should have scored at least once. And if they had it done, if it was early enough, I'd like to think that we'd have responded, because we really did, drop off the tempo and everything. And that's fine as long as you can defend well enough. And we've just about done enough today.
The team that started for us, Dave, I don't think there's a whole lot of choice available to Jurgen in terms of, we had a couple of key injuries. We've gone from must have been a whole 2 days where we had a full squad to lots of people having niggles. And you look at the bench today with Jimmy Milner, who's not going to start again. Joe Gomez, Ox is there. Curtis is back after his little injury. Taki, Jota, Divock, Queeving Kelleher, and Harvey Elliott, who, again, I don't know, would he have merited a start? So you look at the lineup and you go, well, that's pretty much... his mind has been made up for him, really. That kind of team, I would have thought, picked itself, given the available players and the recent form. Would you agree or no?
Like you said, I don't think he had many options really in terms of making changes. We had some doubt over who the left-sided number 8 would be, because Klopp had said yesterday he didn't know if Naby would be ready. And obviously Karl upset everybody when he suggested that James Milner should start there, or could start there, and sent me walking around for the better part of the day and a half feeling miserable. And then I saw their team before I saw our team. I'm not sure why my phone decided to give me an alert for West Ham's team, and there was no Declan Rice. So I'd been worried about Rice running off the back of our midfield. Yeah. Because if Henderson's there and Milner's there, Milner doesn't have the legs to track them, and Henderson doesn't have the awareness to track them. So I was a bit worried about just having Declan Rice. So no Declan Rice. I'm like, okay, we should be okay here. And then I saw our team and Naby Keita's in it. And immediately you just felt this kind of relief that, right, there's someone there that can give us a bit of control in midfield. I mean, the captain doesn't really warrant a place in the team at the minute, but Harvey hasn't impressed since coming back. That's natural. Curtis has been in and out of the team. And if it's between Henderson and Milner, you'd rather have Henderson. So that was the strongest 11 that he could put out. It was basically the team that started the cup final, bar Konate in for Matip. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of what he had available, I think it was the strongest team he could put out. It was certainly enough on the day. And I liked what you said earlier about the defence, or it was Karl that said it about the defence, being more aggressive, because I thought Konate had a really good game. Now, he had some moments where Antonio got the better of him, and we'll get into them.
Yeah, earlier maybe. Yeah.
There was this narrative going around on social media that, he needs to be more aggressive, he needs to be more dominant. And I'm thinking, have you people ever watched Mikel Antonio play? Mikel Antonio is the softest tank you've ever seen. He wants to go out and bully forwards, but if the forward puts any sort of hand on him, he wants to fall over and claim his free kick. And because he's so big and so strong, referees buy it from him all the time. He won a couple of cheap free kicks today. Konate in that first half was being really smart with him. Anytime he backed in, Konate was letting him back in. He wasn't trying to bully his way through him to the ball because he knew what would happen. He knew that Antonio would be lying on the floor, screaming free kick. He'd already been moaning at the referee for the first 20 minutes of the game. And Jim Beglin fed into this. The coverage I watched of the game, I had the joy of listening to Jim Beglin for the game. And my God, did he not used to be decent?
He did.
He was absolutely shocking. He spent the whole game bigging up West Ham and basically talking about how Konate was a little bit scared of Antonio. He was uncomfortable with Antonio. When Antonio knocked it past him down the line and tried to run him, and Konate very comfortably beat him to the ball and then tried to shepherd it out and it didn't quite go to plan, he tried to claim Antonio beat him in the foot race. He gave him a 5-yard head start and drew level with him. No, he didn't.
Oh my God, really?
Not even what happened,
That was one of my favourite moments in the match.
That's the thing. And then I go on social media at half-time and there's people saying strange things about the game and saying that Konate is playing poorly. And I'm like, what are you watching? What is it that you're watching? The reason more of their attacks come down that side is because Virgil plays the other side and nobody wants to attack Virgil. There was a moment in the first half when Antonio broke and got played in behind Virgil by Bowen, and Virgil got back to him. So Antonio just kicked it behind the goal. Didn't even try and take him on. That's the difference. Nobody wants to challenge Virgil, so they will attack the other side. The other side is also easier to play through on the midfield. But people seem to take that as, Konate is the weak link. It's not the case at all. I thought he played really well. I thought individually, all of the back four, Virgil had one bad moment, that header. But I thought Robbo defensively was outstanding. Thought Trent had some really good moments defensively, good on the ball. The midfield worked at times, didn't work at others. And then, as I said earlier, I just thought the attack was very, very wasteful and a little bit hurried in what they were trying to do, which was unusual because they're normally, especially Salah, normally so calm. But I thought Kloppo got his 11 right. I don't think he could have any real complaints.
Yeah, it's a couple of matches in a row now that Mo hasn't reached the high standards that he set himself. You have to be honest and point these things out when they're happening. And I thought he really struggled in the previous game and again today, a little bit wasteful. But, again, to echo what Karl said earlier on, you're going to have little runs like this in any kind of a campaign. And to look at West Ham briefly with you, Karl, before we get into the details of the match, this lineup that Moyes put out, again, to sort of harken back to what Dave said, he didn't really have a whole lot of choice there looking at that bench. Noble's not really a starter anymore. He's on his way out of the club. Ben Rama's there. Diop, Fredericks, Masuaku, Kral, Okaflex, who I've never heard of before, and this kid Chester alongside Areola. So he starts with Fabianski, Dawson and Zuma, who was comically booed for the entirety of the game for being the cat abusing little prick that he is. Cresswell and Johnson either side of them, Souček, Vlasic, Fornals, Bowen, Antonio, Lanzini. And he has a sort of very distinct shape with the ball and without. You can see what they're trying to do the whole time. They have a plan that's really identifiable. And sometimes when we're doing these shows, you guys are the analysts. I struggle sometimes to see what it is a certain manager is trying to do. And when I put it to you, I've been gratified that quite often you guys have agreed that he didn't see whatever it was that was trying to happen. But you can very much see a shape with West Ham and what Moyes is trying to get them to do. And, it is effective, Karl. And that's an effective bunch of Premier League footballers operating right at the top end of the league. And I suppose, talk to me a little bit about them and whether or not you think they will, as Dave suggested earlier, have enough about them to find themselves in the European places again at the end of this season.
I think they will in terms of Europa League places, because we'd expect that will go all the way down to 7th again, or Europa Conference at the very least. But I definitely feel that they missed a big chance to go all out for the Champions League this season. They needed to bring in at least one at the top end of the pitch if they wanted to do that in January, and quite possibly look for another one in defence, which I know they tried to do, but didn't really manage to get over the line. No real issues with the lineup today, although I did think it was a bold call, Cotton, as those of the meme world might say, to Manuel Lanzini at central midfield. It worked okay in terms of when they had the ball and breaking out and being able to, pass a couple of times down the channels and that, but it was not the best, let's say, at stopping our rotation of passes. He's a very talented player, Lanzini, but his physical peak is behind him, with obviously a little bit of an advancing age and the bad injury that he had. So they were chasing shadows for long periods when we had a decent tempo in the first half, especially, and the rest of it, it's just kind of what it is, isn't it? I mean, Fornal's just playing off the forwards instead of left wing back is a positive. Vlasic getting a start, but then not really having anything of the ball at all. Alex Kral still can't get a game. Mark Noble not even picked. I thought he was probably going to come in when I found out that Rice wasn't going to be playing earlier on, before the lineups came out. But I don't know what the story is with Kral there at all. That's just a really, really weird non-use of him this season at all.
Just to finish with these, I'm watching the dynamic and the basic, the real simplicity of trying to isolate Antonio and get Cresswell and Johnson swinging over crosses and stuff like that. It's not really rocket science. And I'm wondering, that's a really interesting point you made there, that they could have possibly had enough to challenge for that fourth spot if they had brought in another attacking talent. And obviously, I presume Lanzini drops out and Rice comes in their best team. What sort of an attacker do you think would they have needed there? What kind of a player? Someone to sort of pick up the scraps around Antonio? Would they change the way that they operate? Would it have required something like that? Or would it be just someone who's like we got with Diaz, who's good enough to go straight into the rotation?
I mean, if they could have got a centre forward who was good enough to go straight into the team, that would have been perfect for them, because Antonio, although he's obviously their centre forward now, remember he was a right back, a right winger, a wing back. He played off the front man. It was only because they needed somebody that he really got in the team as a centre forward, and he's just stayed there because he's done very well. But they don't have to keep him there. If they just signed a starter number 9, given themselves a bit of extra goal threat, then, for example, when they've now not got Yarmolenko, they've not got anybody else at all to play that centre forward role. Jared Bowen can go there, but he's not really a centre forward. So they needed to bring in someone to have a bit of an extra goal threat. Even like in this game, who do they need to turn to off the bench? Not to create chances, but to actually put one in the back of the net. There was nothing really. I mean, out of the players that they brought on, obviously Ben Rama, he's a wide forward. He's more of the same of the likes of Bowen and Vlasic, really. Chester's a young lad, obviously making his Premier League debut today, and he had about 90 seconds or so he was very unlikely to get the goal. Mark Noble was only ever going to score if they got a penalty, so there was no goal-scoring option there that you could turn to. I know Liverpool's squad is, obviously is a far deeper, far greater in terms of expenditure than West Ham's would be, but we had Origi and Minamino and Oxlade-Chamberlain as a potential goal-scoring midfielder, plus Jota, who we actually brought on, who's one of our top scorers. So it's a world of difference, and I just think that if they'd have brought a 1 to even cope along against someone like an Arsenal, they don't have elite number 9s. They got rid of Aubameyang. They have Lacazette and Nketiah. They don't really have an Nketiah at their side even. So even if they'd have just brought that kind of caliber backup in as just an out-and-out number 9 who's going to come off the bench and just do things for them in the final third, be another option, be a scoring option, or a real... I don't know, even a target man that Moyes just wants to go to at certain stages or certain matches. Just something extra to give them a bit more unpredictability, or just to pair 2 up top right in the final stages of games. It would have benefited them a lot more. It probably would have been the difference of them getting an extra 3-4 points, let's say, at the very minimum, and maybe keep Antonio fitter for more matches, because he does, if he has to start playing when European games crank up again now after this week. If he starts playing every 3-4 games, you're going to start getting hip and ankle and hamstring injuries with him again, because he suffered with them for years now.
That's the thing. And their second kind of reliable goal scorer is Bowen, who may now be facing a spell on the sideline. So, you look at Antonio, he's been their top scorer the last couple of seasons, but he's never scored more than 10 in a Premier League season. Now, part of that is that he tends to miss bunches of games, but they badly needed somebody that could start instead of Antonio or come on and play with him or be an option off the bench, someone that maybe offers something a little bit different but can also lead the line in the same way that he does. Failure to do that, failure to add one in midfield. As we said earlier, like no Declan Rice today, so Lanzini's in there. It's not a position he's comfortable in. And you could see it every time we tried to break, he was ahead of the game. So you were left with Souček sort of sitting on his own, with Liverpool runners going both sides of him and Lanzini trying to get back rather than already being in position, because it's just not his natural game to sit that deep. So that failure is going to hurt them. But just on West Ham, I said earlier, when have they been in Europe twice? No, they've done that a couple of times. They've been in Europe 8 times in their history before this season. 4 in the Cup Winners' Cup, because they've won the FA Cup 3 times and they won the Cup Winners' Cup once, so got back in as winners. But in the Premier League era, they've been in the UEFA Cup twice. They got knocked out in the first round and the second round. That was the 2000 season and the 07 season, where they finished runner-up in the FA Cup and got in because they finished 9th in the league. They got in 15-16, having finished 12th, that they got in as the fair play team. So they didn't actually qualify for Europe. They got in because they didn't get booked. And then they got knocked out in the third qualifying round. And then the following season, they finished 7th, and so they got back in and they got knocked out in the playoff qualifier. So they've never even made the group stage of the Europa League. This season, they've obviously advanced to the quarter-final. West Ham, in their entire history, in the entire history of West Ham United Football Club, which dates back to the 95-96 season, and they became a Football League club in the 1920 season. So over 100 years, they have never finished in the top 7 in back-to-back seasons of a top-flight season. Never. So Karl just talked about, our bench versus theirs, a different world. It's a very different world even supporting them, because they don't finish in the top 7. They're generally a mid-table or even bottom half team. Only once have they finished in the top half 3 times in a row. 4 times have they finished in the top half in a row. Twice they finished 3 times in a row in the top half in the Premier League. Top flight. We're always top half. Like, we're top half every year. We don't even think about it. It's automatic. For them, top half has been quite an achievement. So for Moyes to finish potentially top 6 or top 7 back-to-back seasons would be huge. It would be absolutely huge. And look, they're a very basic team in how they attack. There's no real hidden plan here. They're going to get it into Antonio's feet and they're going to get runners off him. That's the very simple, basic fact of what they do. Where Moyes is actually very good with this team is off ball. And I don't mean in a set defense. I mean when they decide that they want to push you back when you have the ball. And you see them, and they did it brilliantly to us at the London Stadium. They don't have a high press, but they also don't have a deep block. They kind of control the middle of the field. And they do that by pushing you back. As you enter that middle third, they start to press up and they force you back, and then they relax. And then you pass into that middle third again, and they press you. And they try and force you back. They're not trying to win the ball. They're just trying to contain you. They don't overcommit. They're very, very well disciplined on this. And you saw it today consistently. We played the ball into Fabinho's feet, and as he tried to turn, there'd be a man right up on him. And then someone would block a passing lane to Henderson, so he'd have to turn back. And he'd play it back to Virgil, and the ball would come into Naby. Now, Naby's better at receiving the ball on the half turn, but he'd have 2 in his face straight away, one blocking a passing lane and one putting pressure on him, so he's playing it back again. And they very, very slowly just work their way out, so they're not pinned back. We didn't pin them at all today. Normally, we pin a team back in their final third, and we just suffocate them. West Ham will not allow that to happen. They'll very slowly and deliberately press their way out, and that's the excellence of Moyes. That's what David Moyes has done to this team. They're not going to blow you away, but you won't hammer them either. they will make it very, very difficult for you to score a goal. You're going to need to be patient. You're going to need to work through multiple sets. And eventually you might find a gap. But more often than not, you don't. And we saw it today. We didn't create, other than the Salah chance early, we didn't create any big chances in the game.
You know, and they're perfectly set up to spring a counter as well, as he said, with the ball into Antonio's feet and runners off. And I think I'm struck by, listen, to both of you there. Ironically, in the dodgier days pre-Moyes, Divock Origi would have been the person that they'd sign for probably £35 million. That's probably what would have happened in old West Ham, but it didn't today. Before we get going, obviously it's our pal Johnny Moss who starts the game by blowing his whistle. He's a remarkable character, John Moss. It never ceases to amaze, I think, the vast majority of football fans that he when they find him sort of ambling about in the middle of their football match, looking at him and going, this lad, how, I think. And as I'm looking at him, Dave, you're a rural man. I know I've discovered or discussed something similar to this before, but a certain time towards late summer, after crops have been harvested, you see the tractors and grass cutters going in, and they're taking the remains of the corn, or they're taking the remains of the grass, and they're making it into bales for feeding the livestock during the winter. And usually these bales are round bales, and they pack them onto those trailers coming away from the field, and they're heading towards the farmyard to get wrapped up. But sometimes, Dave, one of those bales can come away and fall off on the side of the road, and you don't want anyone to have a bad accident, because something like that, that's a little target you don't want to hit. You could do serious damage to a car, or you could certainly cause an accident if it's sticking out in the road a bit. So what do? You go and you get yours and your ma's and your dad's high-vis vest, and you tie them around that roundy bale. John Moss. First half, Dave, was interesting. I'll stay with you. We had that fantastic opportunity right at the start. 1 minute in, that's within the first 2 minutes. Mo was put through on goal by a quick thinking Trent, who plays a free kick. Beautifully arced little forward pass. Mo's away, he's in on goal, and as he's opening his body up with his left foot, he fires at the keeper, who I think saves with his legs, and Mo just can't clear him with it. 3 minutes, there's a little Virgil backheel flick thing from an in-swinging Trent corner. Free from the left-hand side. Probably should have been a corner, actually, as a result. Pretty fantastic. Henderson threw ball in 3 minutes. Dawson does enough to block Mo's effort on that occasion. And I was impressed, I have to say, just, for a little bit of counterbalance that we often have stuff to say. Some very sharp progressive passing from Henderson in those opening minutes. I liked that. It was good to see. He was on the front foot. He was trying to force the ball forward into proper little positions. Another chance happens in 11 minutes. Diaz has a shot blocked, and then Mo shoots the rebound wide. And on 13, the ball gets in towards Antonio. He has a half volley coming down from the left hand side. It's saved by Ali. Goes out for a corner, but nothing comes of that. 19 minutes, another good move from us, ends with a wild left-footed shot by Sadio, nowhere near the target. Some lovely link-up play by Diaz and Robbo leads to a corner in 20 minutes, and then a minute later than that, Antonio takes down a long ball really well, drives down the left and shoots. Another good Ali save, leads to a corner. It's a dangerous one, but we deal with it reasonably well, and then we are one up because the ball is in the back of the net. Now, again, when you get a chance to run off here, please tell me what you thought of this. It is Sadio Mane. It's a great ball in by Trent. Sadio gets there ahead of both the keeper and Dawson and sweeps the ball home in the 6-yard box. Now, there was no joy for me in the celebration. I was immediately, oh, this is going to go to VAR. It did. They took fucking ages and eventually decided that Sadio was not offside. It looked like a very tight decision. The way they were doing it on the screen, I thought initially it was comparatively clear. I thought he looked good. I didn't think it was, but they always sort of change it up then when they're showing you a still for the slides and for the lines. But 1-0 after that description of what happened in those first 27 minutes to a half hour, I don't think it flattered us. You could see what they were all about. You could see the patent threat they posed through Antonio and his ability to drive at defenders. But similarly, you could see what we were trying to do. And I thought that was a fair enough balance for the first half hour to see us 1-up. Would you agree, or did you think they had a little bit more threat and warranted a bit more?
No, I think you're right. I think their threat was the long ball. From different angles, trying to get in behind Kanate, trying to drop it into the channels for Antonio. And that's really all they threatened with in that first sort of 15, 20 minutes. We were a little bit frenetic in the early stages, and I thought we were a little bit out of control at times, just trying to rush things, no real measure to what we were doing. And then on about 12, 15 minutes, Naby Keita really started to home in the game and started to just dictate the pace and get the ball moving in the right directions and get it moving to the players it needed to go to. And it's his involvement that makes the goal, because it's his ball to Trent that takes out two of their midfielders. Trent takes the pass perfectly. I don't know if it's a shot or if it's a cross or what it is. I think he's just putting it in an area, knowing that Sadio will get in there. But it's a great ball from Naby, a brilliant ball from Trent. And Sadio, alive in his new poacher's role, tapping home. I thought they made a bit of a meal of the VAR thing. I didn't think he looked anywhere near offside. I certainly thought that they made the lines nice and thick so that it looked like it was closer than it was. And obviously their keeper was throwing his arms up in the air and shouting. But just to rewind a little bit, I thought we already saw early signs of where John Moss was for the day, because Salah was fouled a couple of times and got absolutely nothing. Antonio spent the entire first 10 minutes bitching at John Moss and really should have been booked for it. Like, they had a corner. He walked 15 yards to have a go at the referee to then walk back. He should have been booked for that. That's dissent. He should have been booked.
That was so weird. I presume Johnny Moss had called him out to talk to him, because it was so weird that he followed him. I thought he'd said, the way they get them away from the club.
Come over this way. But Moss seemed surprised when he turned around and Antonio was still standing there. And then he goes back in, and it's the shithousery of what they try and do on set pieces. They try and basically build a wall around Alisson and hope that he can't get anywhere near the ball. Antonio crouches over, I'm not touching the goalkeeper, but he's not going to get anywhere near the ball because I'm just going to be the biggest blockade I can be. But yeah, Alisson, I think, complained on the first corner that Antonio bumped him before the ball was struck. Moss walked in and said something, walked back out, and Antonio just went wandering after him to have a good old moan. And he should have been booked, because every single decision that was given for the next 10 minutes, Mikel Antonio was crying about something. And yet Salah was getting knocked to the floor 3 or 4 times and absolutely nothing got given.
Yeah, agreed completely. The lad had no control in the game whatsoever at any point, you'd have to say. And the balance of the first half was interesting, Karl. There's quite a bit still to happen, quite a few incidents. First thing of note is on 30 minutes, that incident Dave was referring to before we got started into the match details, where Kanate found himself in a foot race with Antonio. And again, I don't understand any narrative other than what I actually saw with my own eyes, which is I was just absolutely delighted that, their pacey forward tried to take on our pacey defender to no avail, because our man was ahead of the ball, or ahead of him to the ball with comparative ease. I took great solace from that. I certainly didn't see anything negative in it whatsoever, or that he was rattled, or quite the opposite, I thought. But anyway, following on from that, in 31 minutes, there was an incredible run by Diaz, who carried the ball for ages and was taken out. Dawson tried to take him out and got a yellow card later on for it. Then Zuma, feline abuser that he is, took him out on the edge of the box. Now, that leads to a free kick, which Trent hits beautifully just wide of the left top corner as you're looking at it. Luis and Mo combined on about 37 minutes. Luis Diaz has an effort cleared off the line. The ball comes back. Mo Salah tries to get a shot away, but they get it. They foil his efforts as well. Then in 38 minutes, I think this is the one that Dave was trying to think of earlier on. Vlasic was played in. He sort of lobs Ali, who's advancing, but Trent gets back to clear off the line brilliantly. Ali gets up then to block the next effort as it's heading goalwards. And then the rebound comes away and Ibrahima Konate gets in an excellent block to lead to a corner, which, to be fair, they get ahead to, and it's narrowly over the top. So again, that threat is alive. 42 minutes, another bit of threat from them. Antonio has a shot wide of the near post. And on 43 minutes, after some decent play, Mo tried basically to beat everybody. His pass sort of came back to him eventually. He tried to play it from left to right. It bounced back towards him and he tries an ambitious volley which goes kind of wildly over. He kind of hits up and under rather than through. They had, again, to give Dave credit about the point he was making, they did kind of come together after our goal in a way that suggested quite a lot of character. And in that little piece of the match that I've just described, they've had quite a few attempts and posed a serious threat. But similarly, so did we. What did you make of that chunk of the game, and what stood out for you?
Well, what stood out was definitely Diaz's run. That was lightning. That was brilliant. We haven't had someone who can carry the ball, not as directly as Salah does, because obviously he carries at long distance and just runs in like straight lines. And he kind of reminds me, when Salah's dribbling the ball long distance, of like one of the old analog joysticks that you used to use on like Sensible Soccer, where you've only got 8 different directions that you can run at any one time.
Yeah.
Diaz is a little bit more fluid, if you know what I mean. The ball changes direction a little bit more frequently and a little bit more almost just like natural 360 degree turning almost. And that run was really, really good. Very, very controlled all the way. Had a couple of moments where maybe he could have played the through ball, but I think it was very, very tight, and he probably did the right thing to try and take on that last man. And if he had avoided the challenge, basically, he was into the box there. So really, really good threat off the counter-attack. That used to be a big thing for Liverpool, and even against West Ham in particular. I think I remember like 2 or 3 different games where we've actually scored off their corners and stuff. So it's nice to see that we have another player who brings that back to the team as well.
How did Kurt Zuma not get booked there, though?
I don't know. I thought this yellow card was for him, but it wasn't in the end. It was
for Dawson, but both of them should have been booked. I mean, Dawson should have been booked for the attempted foul, and then Zuma should have been booked for the actual foul.
Should we take also a second to note, I don't know if either of you saw it, that there was a plane with a banner flown above the game? Just
No. What was it?
It was aimed at Kurt Zuma.
Oh, okay, excellent. We won't quote it then, but excellent.
I need to know how much these planes cost, because I saw Karl Markham's tweet about that plane with the banner, and all I could think of was like, how much has somebody paid to have that flown over the stadium? Like, does this person own the plane? Is this just something they do as a hobby?
I'm curious now, genuinely curious to the as to the price, because we could maybe sponsor one from Raw before the end of the year, aimed at our man here in the middle, in the roundy middle that he is. Carl, is that it for the first half? Anything else you want to point out, or will we get cracking into the second?
I just want to say that basically throughout, apart from that last 5 minutes or so where we did then start to lose a little bit of control in terms of letting them play out a bit more directly, that first half, the midfield was nearly perfect for me. nearly perfect with what they did on and off the ball there. There were obviously a couple of little things like you mentioned Trent Alexander-Arnold's sort of swiped volley there where he kind of span it up in the end. That was actually because of Henderson's set down to him, which was a little bit sloppy like. So it was still fine. He still teed him up for the shot, but just a couple of little bits like that could have been better. But overall, the midfielders were really, really good. I thought Keita was brilliant first half. Really, really good. Quiet in terms of actual impact in either thing, but actually just really, really good. Closed off their counter-attacks like 3-4 times in the first half just by his positional work, just by closing off the passing lane. One really good recovery run. The pass for the goal over the defender towards Trent was just unbelievably good. Again, it won't go down as like assist. It's just a pass, but it was very, very good. Fabinho first half was really good. Henderson, I thought first half with the combination play down that right-hand side was really good. He was overlapping Salah quite wide. Which we saw right back at the start of the season and maybe not so much in the middle third of the season from that right side at 8 role. I just thought that the balance of it was very, very nice. And when they stopped being quite as much on the front foot, especially after half time, when they stopped closing down quite close to the forwards, when they stopped with the passes, that was when our problems started, when they started getting out from their half a little bit easier, when they were able to send a few more players to support the attacking line. That was where we started to get the problems. But the first half...
The best part of Henderson's half, Karl, do you know what the best part of his half was?
The little touch around the corner.
No, the lovely little left-footed flick was great. But his second phase move in that, when he made the break onto the left wing, and then played a lovely ball back into a central area, he got his head up, and rather than doing what he is prone to doing and slinging the ball into the box aimlessly, he actually got his head up and considered what he needed to do and found the perfect pass. I think it was Fabinho moving on to the play that he found about 10 yards outside their box, and then Fabinho, because Fabinho then played it on to Trent, and Trent had that cross in that led to a bit of a scramble. And the other great thing about Henderson's first half, there were none of those stupid clipped crosses to the back post.
No, that came for the second half.
Yeah, he kept them for the second half. He didn't want to let us down. Didn't have any of those. He was on the ball a lot less in the first half as well. A lot of his runs were off ball. He was making, decoy runs, and he was... That's where you want him. You want him making those runs.
I tell you a great half. I really did. Overall, it was a really good half. It's with a couple of others, you'd have to say it fell away a bit, but it wasn't just him. The form sort of fell away a little bit with one or two in the second half.
I'd say most of the front
dropped
four
off completely. Yeah,
because he
dropped off
was
completely
almost
on and
playing
off the ball.
He was almost playing it in a front four in the first half.
Yeah.
It was Naby and Fab, and then Henderson sort of wide right swapping with Mo, and then in the second half it was like Mo, Henderson, and I thought Mane all dropped off. I thought Diaz had a quieter second half and then sort of woke up again later on in the game, but that front four intensity seemed to drop in the second half, which enabled them to start coming more and more into the game.
100%. And sorry, Karl, go ahead.
No, just at half time again, that midfield three, Fabinho had a 93% pass completion rate. He'd misplaced 3 passes. Henderson had 97. He'd misplaced 1. And Keita had a 100% pass completion rate. They were on the ball. They were proper on it. There were a couple of occasions where each of them did lose possession, like Keita tried to dribble and got tackled, that kind of thing. But basically, they were as close to perfect as you could ask them to be in that kind of a game.
Yeah, I mean, there's not many games you wouldn't take that midfield going into. Let's be honest. And the second half began quite badly for the Reds because on 47 minutes, and I think I'm going to you on this, Dave, it was a atypically bad sort of backwards header by Virgil, which put the defence under a bit of pressure. Robbo did really well to get across and block Bowen, who was through on goal. And Robbo, for me, maybe on balance, I thought was our best operator throughout the 90 minutes. I thought he was really, really solid. Defensively, really threatening going forward. I loved his performance today, I have to say. Trent has a half volley from distance on 49 minutes, but it's one of those token efforts that he directs properly to the top corner, but the keeper can catch it. So, there's not massive threat there. Bowen had to go off then. Hard to tell what the injury was, I thought, but he looked in serious pain. I thought I'd noticed the eyes watering a little bit, which is never a good sign.
They had him standing on one foot, and so I wonder if it's like a foot injury. I didn't see what happened to him. They didn't show any replays. No, I wonder if he kicked the bottom of Andy Robertson's foot.
Maybe some sort of a foot fracture or something. You wouldn't know, but he looked to be both in pain, unable to put his weight on it. You do wonder, really, because it took him about 579 minutes to get off the pitch. You do wonder what's going on there. They looked to be going to the near touchline, then went all the way back across. And of course, you'd suspect time wasting, but I think it was just to get directly to the bench rather than have to walk the length of the pitch or the circumference of the pitch or whatever the correct word is. But anyway, things don't look great for him.
Get ready.
Possibly that. But the lad looked in so much pain that I would question the sense behind that kind of a decision. But anyway, he didn't look good. Benrahma came on in 53, 57 after quite a nice flowing bit of football. Naby shot wide from distance. Some lovely play. High-tempo football in 58 minutes from the Reds led to nothing, but still quite impressive. They bring on Noble for Vlasic on 60 and on 63. A tremendous bit of breakaway football by Sadio. He played in Luis Diaz, who shot just wide. Gorgeous switch ball, that feature of Liverpool under Klopp because of Trent on 65 minutes. He picks out Robbo. That leads to an opportunity where on 66, Mo has a volley that's hit low but at the keeper, and he follows that up on 66 minutes. Again, Robbo does brilliantly to break, picks out Mo centrally, and he hits another really tame low shot centrally and at the keeper. It's a little bit disappointing. And we'll finish, Dave, myself with yourself on this little moment is 69 minutes where there are two chances for Lanzini, I think, to finish centrally after a Souček cross. He takes it down nicely where he could have finished first time to set himself for the shot, and then the shot is horrendous. He just sort of blows it over from, great opportunity, hits it wildly over the bar. It is, if we're being honest, Dave, a fantastic opportunity to mug us and take a point at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I genuinely don't know what he was thinking, because he's normally such a composed player. But, that was the sort of third or fourth big opportunity that they'd had. And Trent, to his credit, obviously did brilliantly on the Fornals one. And he does really well here as well, because just the fact that he made Lanzini take the touch and then try to reset himself, it did, I think, play a part in Lanzini putting the ball as far over the bar as he did. But there was just these consistent warning signs that, don't get too comfortable here, Liverpool. Now, these are, we're not going away. These are the chances that we can create against you. And, like I said earlier, they're a good football team. It's as simple as that. They're a good football team, and they will not have any fear of anybody. They've given most of the big sides a good game this year. They've beaten City, they've beaten United in the Cup, they beat Chelsea in the league, and they beat us in the league. They're just a good team, and good teams create chances when you give them opportunities. We allowed them to come back into the game with that little drop in tempo that we had in the second half, and they came very close to punishing us.
And Dave, I'll be back to you to wrap up with your final thoughts next time out. And Karl, you and I will see the match through to the end, because after that opportunity for Lanzini, a great opportunity for Lanzini, a couple of minutes after that, 71, there were two separate attempts from Sadio, one after the other, both blocked. 73 minutes, Mo had a shot blocked. 74 minutes, Luis Diaz fired wide of the top corner. He had instigated a really good attack, kind of cut across goal and hit wide of the right-hand top corner as you're looking at the goal. And, that was a really good response from us to that opportunity. And again, on 77 minutes, some great stuff from Luis Diaz. He found Mo in a central position, but again, the shot was blocked. We took on Jota for Mo Salah, who wasn't best pleased to be going off. don't think he could argue after his last couple of games, if we're being perfectly honest. 79 minutes. There was a little bit of a Robbo nibble, and then Naby Keita with a fantastic bit of defensive cover to block, because Antonio was released on the break down the right, and this was a very dangerous situation. We needed that Robbo nibble. We needed Naby to make it that fantastic block on Antonio on 79 minutes. There was a halfway dangerous Benrahma cross after a fairly atrocious alley clearance straight into the middle of the park on 82 minutes. And I don't know what you were watching on, but I was watching on Sky, and Jamie Carragher seemed to be desperate for West Ham to equalise. His pal, certainly on commentary duty, was. We had a little break on the 88 minutes. Jota was in a fantastic position. I think he had both Sadio and Diaz inside him. He was right side, and he failed to put the pass in that would have been a certain goal, you'd have thought. 88 minutes, the same man, Jota, picked up a yellow for taking out Fornals in a cynical fashion. Fair play to him. We bring on Jimmy Milner on 89, and then they add 5 whole minutes. There's a handball by Zuma on 91 minutes. I'm not taking anything else. I've seen these ones given all the time. Yes, his hand is down by his side, but yes, his hand blocks the trajectory of the ball, whatever. Nothing given. 92 minutes, they bring on the kid Chester for Fornals. 93, Sadio kicked the ball away and picked up a yellow for himself. 94, a lovely bit of play. Sadio and Diaz breaking. Jota fired wildly over, certainly so far not offering what it was that he was supposed to offer, you'd imagine. And 95 minutes, a nice little bit of play by Kloppo to introduce another sub on our behalf. He brings on Curtis. That kind of kills the game completely, or their momentum, especially when Curtis carries the ball up into the top left-hand corner. And that pretty much ends the game. There's a lot of incident there, Karl. We have to be honest. And again, in the middle of all our attempts and pressure and dominance of possession, there are some really clear-cut opportunities, or direct opportunities for them that we have to deal with.
Yeah, and again, I think most of it stems from a lack of pressure on the ball higher upfield. I mean, in the first half, we were really, really good with the recycling of play. We were very good at getting 2 and 3 people around there. Let's say it was over at the left back, then the centre back and the centre mid ahead of them as well. We were very, very good in terms of cutting off the passing lanes, and that's how we had so much control of the game. And then later on, it was way too open. There was no real tempo to our possession. There was no real energy off the ball as well, and it was very easy for them to get out. And some of those were just direct balls into Antonio or into the channels, and they won a lot of set pieces off those. And then the other ones were the ones like that one you've just mentioned, where Keita had to make that really good track back, and that was probably one of the most important ones, along with Trent's clearance off the line. These were quite close to really good goal scoring opportunities for them. I would still say mainly on the balance of the chances that they had, Liverpool's were better. The almost chances, like when Salah and Diaz couldn't quite get it over the line between them from like 2 yards out. These felt like bigger chances to me, even though they didn't necessarily get a shot away from them in the end. A lot of theirs were like quite hurried, quite under pressure, some last-ditch behaviour from us, but that's okay. That's part of the reason that we play this high line, because we have the players who do have the recovery pace. And like I said right back at the beginning of the podcast, we were very, very aggressive today defensively. Back 4 and probably Keita in particular were really, really on the front foot, really clever and important in terms of getting in front for little challenges, or being very strong in the aerials for the centre back pairing in particular. There was one instance, I think it might have been on Antonio in the second half, where Konate has basically run ahead of him and got his foot in and won the ball. Antonio falls down and Konate goes to play on, but fleshy whistle bearer in the centre of the pitch has decided it's a free kick, which
and that's what I mean
about no end.
But that's what I meant earlier on when I said you can't touch Antonio, because he will go down, and because he's such a big guy, referees just immediately buy that he's been fouled.
Only Jimmy Miller can outdo him in that regard, and it's not because Jimmy's big; it's just because Jimmy's Jimmy. In terms of fooling referees, it's a remarkable thing to watch. It really is. Karl, I'm going to come back to you in a minute to get your last thoughts, and Dave, I'll get yours now. In terms of wrapping this one up, and do it at the end as usual. Let people know what you've got coming up.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to get 3 points from what I have dubbed the Julian Dix derby. Others have other ideas about what it should be. We have a thread going on Twitter with many illustrious names that played for both clubs, the likes of Stuart Downing and Andy Carroll and Mike Marsh and David Burrows and David James and, of course, Neil Ruddock.
Did Stan play for them at one stage?
No.
I know he played for Villa. Did he not do a little stint at West Ham?
No, I don't think he did. I don't think Stan would have gone down too well with Londoners.
No.
But Julian Dix, for me, just encompasses sort of everything about West Ham Football Club and also that era of Liverpool. And it's worth remembering, whenever you're talking about Graham Souness, we should always remember, of course, first and foremost, the greatest midfielder we've ever had, and arguably the greatest midfielder Britain has ever produced. But also that he once bought Julian Dix and Neil Ruddock in the same calendar year, deciding that they were the men to lead Liverpool forward. But no, look, it's a good 3 points. I think the first half was a lot better for us than the second half. I disagree with Karl. I think they have better chances, but it's almost, you look at the Bowen chance, you look at the Antonio chance, you look at the Fornals chance, and the Lanzini one, and it's almost like they had a little bit too much time. Like, they all had shots, they all had the opportunity to shoot and allowed themselves to get closed down. They all had plenty of time, space, and opportunity and allowed themselves to get closed down. And if any one of them goes in, obviously we're having a very different conversation this evening, but huge credit to Trent on the Fornals one, huge credit to Robbo on the Bowen one and on the Antonio one, because it's obviously it's his tackle, and then Naby gets back brilliantly as well. And, Trent again on the Lanzini one does really, really well. So like Karl said, our defenders were really aggressive. They were very, very brave. They were not afraid to put themselves in the line. I thought we had a number of good performances. I thought the left side, once again, was the better side for us. I thought Robbo, Naby, and Diaz were all excellent. I thought Trent had a good game. Henderson had a good first half and a poor-ish second half. Not a bad second half, but poor-ish compared to what it was the first half. And I just thought Salah was poor. I thought Salah was probably our worst player and was almost kind of a negative impact at times, just because he seemed absolutely determined that he was going to score regardless of anything else. And hopefully he can shake that out of himself and get back to doing what he does best, which is, scoring 20 goals in 10 games or whatever. But all things considered, we'll take the win. We'll be happy with the win. They're a top 6 side. I think they're 5th in the league at the moment. So anytime you can beat a team that's in that place in the league, you're going to be happy enough. And we'll move on. And we've got bigger fish to fry now. We've got second leg against Inter coming up. We've got a title race to contend with. We've got the FA Cup and Nottingham Forest or Huddersfield to play. And it's all looking very, very positive for the Reds, especially with one piece of silverware already in the bank. And if Manchester United can do us a big favour tomorrow, I promise I won't say anything mean about Paul Pogba for at least 48 hours. That's my promise to all United fans. But no, look, you're just going to be happy with 3 points. Yeah, I'm on Two-Footed every day at 4 p.m, Daily Red every day at lunchtime. I may need a substitute to fill in against Inter. That's looking like it's unlikely for me. And yeah, I'm sure I'll be on something else during the week as well. There'll be a couple of scouters during the week as well.
Excellent stuff. Thanks, Dave, for that. And Karl, yourself and myself, just before you get started on your final thoughts, are back for Inter. Is that correct?
I can't honestly remember. Might be.
I think it is. It's Harry at the minute.
Oh, sorry, it is. It's Harry.
So if Karl wants to do it, Karl can do it.
I think Harry might have 2 in a row, actually. And then, yeah, okay, that's fine. We'll work that out in the meantime. So, final thoughts from yourself, man. And also do let folks know what's going on with you in the next few days.
Yeah, kind of the same as we've said. You kind of just take these ones, get out there, take the points. We've closed the gap to 3. We shouldn't forget that, until tomorrow. Then we've played the same number of games, and it's just a 3-point gap now after however big it was only a couple of months ago when people were saying it was done. It's not. It doesn't mean that it's going to be finishing our way. There's still got to be games like this ahead, and the big game against Man City obviously is still going to decide an awful lot. But we have a lot of optimism, a lot of players who are in really good form. We've got players outside what would be termed for many people the strongest 11 who are coming in and putting in really, really good performances. I mean, it's still early to say Luis Diaz is a start and 11 player. He's in the team, in the lineup at the minute because we've got a couple of injuries elsewhere over the last few weeks in attack. It will be very, very interesting to see beyond this week, beyond Inter Milan, when we've got all 5 forwards fit, who does get picked for these quite important games that we've got coming up in the attacking line in particular. And you've both mentioned Salah not being at his best today and not being at his best in the last couple of matches. Maybe he's one of the ones who'll come out just for one game or so and start rotating and resting 1 or 2 of them for the running. And if that is the case, I think we should all be very excited because an angry Mo is a thing to behold at times when he comes back into form. So hopefully that is there is going to be a spark for 1 or 2 of them coming up, and maybe this guy who has been quite the mid-season revelation for us is going to be one of the ones to push to even more silverware. That will be something to look forward to across the rest of the season.
That is absolutely for sure. And in terms of what you've got coming up, my friend, for the next couple of days, apart from the scouted pods, which Dave has mentioned, probably one for Inter and one after that for who's up next, Brighton. What else have you got?
I've got a piece for, if people want the European football stuff, it's on Napoli and Serie A, which takes place on Sunday, so worth a read ahead of that game. Big one at the top of Serie A. There's also a Newcastle United piece on their resurgence and basically escaping from any kind of relegation fear whatsoever. The numbers behind their rise and what Eddie Howe has done for them. And probably I'll have a piece on Liverpool centre-backs from this game today and how it's all looking very good at the back again for Liverpool, despite all this recent fear-mongering about the high line, which has kept yet another clean sheet today.
If you have any sense, you will be reading Karl's writing, you'll be listening to what Dave is talking about on podcasts. And just from a personal point of view, can I just point out that we are 3 points behind Manchester City, and I find it borderline disgusting, the consistent media narrative that we are, hunting them. We are still in the hunt. It's 3 points. It's 3 fucking points. That's all it is. They play their city rivals, their local rivals tomorrow. They've got to play us. It's 3 points. Level on games played. We have a better goal difference. I don't understand.
And we have to play them.
Why can't you believe? If you can't believe, you will never believe in anything. So have a go and just lean into a bit of optimism for this, because it's a wonderful, wonderful time to be following this club. Harry and I will be with you for both Inter and for the game against Brighton, which Dave will join us for, and someone else will be filling in for Dave on Inter on Tuesday night. So plenty of Raw to come. Malby on the Spot will be with you on Monday. You've heard Dave Hendrick. You've heard Karl Matchett. Guy Drinkle has been producing for us brilliantly as always. I'm Trev Downey. We'll speak to you soon.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.